Welcome to Dining Room Stories with Omar and Andrea, where we take you behind the scenes of the restaurant business world with stories and conversation that inspire. Buonasera everyone. Today we have the honor to have one of the most eclectic and underrated wine expert in this business, Piero Tantini, owner of Godot Wines. Piero, welcome to Dining Room Stories.
Thank you very much. Buonasera.
It's a pleasure to have you here. You know, when we have guests like you, for us is an excitement, and we just want to know all your stories. Originally from Bologna, how did you end up in Sydney?
I ended up in Sydney as I was actually, it's a long love story with Australian wine and the Australian enology. I actually imported Australian wines in Italy in the 90s. And so every holiday occasion was like traveling through wine regions of Australia for years and years and years. And then it actually happened that after years and years of holidays in Australia, I had the chance to get a permanent resident visa from Italy, actually. And so I just put it on side, and after 2 years of getting this permanent resident visa, I decided to make the most of it. And I moved to this fantastic country in 2007. And quite naturally, I found myself in the same environment in terms of professional profile. And so I started mingling with chefs, sommelier, and wine shop managers. And they asked me if I knew that producer in that specific region, which was not available in Australia, and if I could bring some. And so I started bringing wine to Australia in a very guerrilla artisan way, which was going with a removal truck to Port Botany and just unloading the old truck of wine to these places.
And we are curious to know, what was the transition from owning a restaurant and wine bar in Bologna in the 90s to coming to Australia and Sydney and then exporting your wine business to Melbourne and Gold Coast as well? Tell us about that. What was this transition?
The transition actually was pretty swift and sweet and regular. What I immediately saw is that there was an opportunity, there was space for the product. It was Australia was, and still is, a quite transparent, easy to read business environment. And especially coming from 10 or so years of small business in Italy with totally different level of complexity, which also means that you learn a lot. And the moment you move to a more structured and easier to read environment, it gets quite natural to develop your business, and luckily in most cases you succeed.
I know you, we had lunch together. Many people in business know you because you are a renowned expert in this world, but you're not a public face. So can you tell us your experience with social media? And actually the funny things that I wanted to see before was, can you show us your Google Calendar in 2024?
Yeah, my 2024 Google Calendar is actually this one, which is a tiny, still, diary made of paper. All my appointments are here. I can't, it's a generational thing. I mean, the approach to social media is not, I don't have any opposition to social media. I actually totally respect the field, and if you manage them, they can be outrageously effective.
Do you use social media in your business in Godot Wines?
No, we don't. And again, it's a mix of generational aspect, because I was born, I lived a pre-smartphone and a pre-Facebook, which was the beginning phase. And the moment it all started, I actually took my time to observe the phenomenon. The moment the phenomenon developed, I understood that it was not made for our line of business. It was not coherent with our line of business, and mostly because of the B2B structure of our business. So we bring products from the other side of the world. They are quite specialized products, and we need to approach professionals. So in a pre-Instagram phase, a tool that was at the beginning, but still mostly used and so effective to approach the general public, was not of great interest to us. We started that way, and we're still that way. It would be a completely different game if we had as a customer base the general public. I totally agree, and I understand that you cannot escape, or actually the other way around. You need to dive into social media to approach the general public.
Ciao Piero.
Ciao.
Such a pleasure to have you here.
Yes.
I'm gonna start with a controversial question. Why Sydney over Melbourne? A lot of people like move here. A lot of Italians are here in Melbourne. So why you choose Sydney over Melbourne?
Yeah, I don't want to get into rivalries, but I mean, we come from the place of the total rivalry. We have in Italy a different language and a different tradition every 30 k's, and potentially the people we've been at war for hundreds of years are our neighbors. So, of course, luckily, this did not apply to Australian history. The Sydney against Melbourne thing for me is that coming from a relatively high density, historical, medieval center place like Bologna, where actually you always tread on someone else's foot the moment you walk around. You don't see the sky because it's very narrow medieval streets with porticos. Sydney for me represented really this very open space, this totally immersed in nature space. And I actually wanted a place that took me as far away from the classic city structure. I feel, coming from Italy, that Melbourne is a city. It's very much beyond, the square plan and structure of the urban, let's say, structure of the city. Sydney was so diverse, and it was mostly nature inhabited by people, which is the case also for Melbourne, but of course it's beautiful parks and stuff. But for me, that was really what impressed me the most. So I started in Sydney, and I'm still there.
Oh, that's great. I lived in Sydney for 1 year, and I love the weather. Like, winter was just a couple of months just wearing a jacket, so it was really nice. But at the end of the day, like, a lot of people come to Melbourne also for weekends just for food. So I wouldn't say, but in theory, like, the Melbourne food scene is more developed and you can get better food in Melbourne. Can you confirm this, or what do you think?
I think there is a super wide and so professional and qualitative offer in Melbourne, which is incredible. There is also, from an Italian perspective, and we're all Italians, we perfectly understand our heritage in terms of gastronomy, a very, very different, I think, story and a different expression, where in Melbourne, when you come from Italy, I think you really see still the gravity and the density of the Italian heritage. If you come to Sydney, I don't think you get the same impact. At the same time, you have fantastic professionals and excellent quality. But in Sydney, I think you get definitely, by far, less historic Italian food background than in Melbourne. In Melbourne, it's...
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, first time I came here, like, I got extended family here in Melbourne. Like, my cousin was just taking me to the Abruzzo Club, the Veneto Club, and this was like, so it's like, oh, because to me it's like, oh, you come here, I want you to see and experience the actual, like, Italianity, like, here in Melbourne, so it's really good. But talking about, like, wine, for example, because you're into, like, wine distribution, do you think that, like, some wines are, like, more overrated in restaurants and, like... Because I think, like, wine is like kind of an art to actually understand what this quality of wine. And sometimes I got the perception in Australia there's not a lot of tradition around understanding exactly what is a good wine or not. What do you think about that?
This is a point, and the last thing that you want to do when you bring a product the other side of the world is to create a commotion or controversy or competition between local tradition and local product and what you bring. I think that there is a business element which always was and still is the understandable success and the super positive trend of Italian food all over the world, which, as we know, through the last 30 years or so, has been the only one, together with the Asian, that constantly grew in interest, in business, in volume, in expression.
That's right.
And that brings, of course, Italian wine together. It's really the driver to bring stuff to the other side of the world. You have Italian food and you want to match it with Italian wine. Having said that, there are two elements that we need to take into account. We, in the first place, but potentially all of our colleagues bring in Italian wine, we make a living on a quite narrow range of products. It's been for years and it still is what is very well known and high rotation, the Prosecco, the Chianti, the Soave, and on and on and on. At the same time, the motivation and potentially, I think, really the scope of our business and our action is to make the most of the great diversity of Italy, so the number of varieties and the very local things. So on one end, yes, we need to exploit what people understand very well. On the other, our mission is to introduce the rest of the world to very unique varieties, which is just us.
So let's say, like, I got like I work in food business, I got a restaurant, or like, and I want to work with Pietro from Godot. It's like, just working with you means basically quality, right? So what happens is, like, you bring some really good wines and then you got clients, or maybe not in your restaurant because you don't run it anymore, but like they complain about the quality and say, this wine is terrible, and they send it back to you. What would you do?
This is for us
Standard
especially.
practice.
Yes, correct. This is the basic of customer management when you are in an hospitality operation. It's not that the customer is always right.
I once had a bottle of Sassicaia sent back and was completely fine.
Yeah,
and
correct.
It was a very
There are
unpleasant situation.
Yeah, there are these dramatic episodes marking your soul for the rest of your life, like you can't sleep because you remember that, which is a very stressful situation and an extreme one because of the importance of the wine and the price and everything. But most of all, the lesson of hospitality is that you need to make the customer very happy, and you need to react very quickly when you receive not so positive feedback. You need to come up with another solution, or even the second, the third, the fourth. Okay, don't worry, I'll take it back, I'll give you another one. Do you like that? You need to be ready to insist and invest on the customer till you find the product that connects with the customer and the customer likes. And then you win.
So it's never that the customer doesn't understand the quality, right?
No, the customer, it's the basis of having a discussion or an argument or whatever, or a disagreement with the customer is never about quality.
Okay, what's about?
It is about customer satisfaction. So you are there to make the customer very happy, in the case of wine, about what he is drinking. And at the same time, you need to come up with an experience for the customer. So no problem. The customer who is disagreeing with you is the best customer, because he's giving you a platform to work upon and just bring the customer to an area that it's our job.
What I see in my restaurants is that customers 80% of the time get always the same thing, and 20% of the time they want to try something different, but they're very reticent on trying something new. So it's the ability of the restaurateurs.
It's on us to take them somewhere else. It's on us it's our function to take them on a tour, on an experience. And at the same time, of course, people stick to what they know. we know. And that, again, brings to, professionally for us, to have a limited number of products that they develop a great part of our business, because this is what people are comfortable with. They know the taste, they know the profile. I mean, I don't want to get into Sauvignon Blanc from Marlborough, but that is the thing.
Do you find that you work with a lot of sommeliers in the restaurant, in the wine importing business? Yeah. Do you think this is the same for sommeliers or for a B2B business? Like they're always ordering the same thing?
Not really. From a B2B perspective, when you work with professionals like we do, and when I visit customers and I have tastings with people responsible for wine in a company, in an operation, it's a fantastic learning process. The level of professionalism that we have in Australia is paramount. The level of curiosity and hands-on approach of young Australian wine professionals, I think it's unparalleled all over the world. It's super professional people, very knowledgeable, very passionate. They're very lucky because they got hundreds of people like me bringing an organization like ours, bringing excellent selections of wines from every country of the world. So Australia was and still is the place to be for young professionals to access a series of things, because the story of the last 15 years has been such that 15 years ago when I started, we were still into the classic pattern of Soave Chianti kind of thing. And then it's been a constant revolution and still going on. And you find everything from every country. So a lot of competition from our side, very challenging, but great level of satisfaction, because the person you're talking to it's got a great knowledge, a great passion. At the same time, and you are one of the examples, you also have great Italian talents coming the other side of the world to operate food and beverage operations. So again, for me, it's been the land of plenty in terms of relationships and sharing knowledge about the wine. So B2B is one thing, B2C is a very different subject.
Yeah, and that's like a question around, you started like, if you say 20 years ago? How many years ago? Like with
in Australia, 15 now.
15 years ago, right? So what would you tell like a newcomer, like someone that would like to start the same business today? What are the tips that you tell them?
I think a newcomer needs to read through a completely changed scenario and environment. I think I was very lucky in terms of timing, mid-2000s. It was really a more relaxed and more comfy phase in terms of economics, which helps. And it was, we were really out of a sort of stereotypical or stereotyped model of the Italian food and beverage. People were very ready to accept new things. Now the only thing, it's not a problem or an obstacle, but you need to come to terms and you need to face a level of offer, a density, segmentation, a level of specialization. Now it's the level of complexity. So the level of complexity is probably framing an entrepreneur into a very specific model. Potentially, I think this is true for every area.
Regarding this, what do you think of natural and organic wines? That it seems to be the trend. Everybody's on to natural, organic, bio.
The natural organic wine, and again, it is a sort. The very good thing is that it is a sort of a ripe process. So now we are probably in a sort of plateau phase, a sort of ripe phase, mature phase, where you have very good products which are made with following very specific philosophy, approach, viticultural practices, winemaking practices. I am super fond of artisan, minimal intervention, natural, because then it becomes a very semantic thing. If you use the word, for years people have played on the theme of the word natural, telling all the wine is natural. So
Everything is natural.
come on, yeah. So
guys from
it's
the
just
land,
it's
right?
just a very quick way, very quick rendition, simplification of instead a very deep concept.
Or is a marketing thing?
Having said that, the marketing phase has worked and is still working very well, potentially more for organic than natural wine. Natural wine started and still is very much of a niche thing. And of course, so there is an element of reaction, there is an element of a bit of a revolutionary one, or political, ideological, philosophical. So it started very strong, and then now it's stabilizing.
It's fading away a little bit.
It's fading away. I mean, one thing is the approach, one thing is the product. In terms of interest and approach, yes, probably there is a bit less interest and a bit less of following of the phenomenon. In terms of product, instead, it's exactly the other way around. You have more and more excellent, very good, and easy, approachable, and easy to read natural wine than before. Because, of course, the moment you act in a sort of, let's say, out of control, but that is not exactly the definition, but you don't apply practices, while you subtract practices, it is very difficult to come up with a product for everyone, or very easy to read, or by the standards, very clean, very good, very approachable, very drinkable. It's just a matter of time. So every year that passes, if you're playing non-intervention, you will get better. So we get far more good so-called natural wines now than 15 years ago. But unfortunately, as it is not a phenomenon which is so easy to follow, maybe it's difficult at the moment to promote and sell that style of wine. It's certainly more difficult than just 5 years ago.
Piero, what do you think about wine ratings? Wine Spectator, James Halliday, every wine is winning 100 points. Is it really true? Is a marketing thing? Or these ratings, they truly reflect the quality of the wine?
This is a very, very boring subject. It's an outrageously boring subject because, and you see what happened to the ratings and the points and on and on and on. So the beginning of the story, again, when someone is putting something on the map, it's not good by definition, but it did something. So the subject started, the conversation starts, very good. The end of the story is that it's, I think, 10, 15 years or so, that people receives communication from supermarkets with self-rated wines. Or you have writers, and everything is a 94, a 96, a 98. So this is just, we do it, the three of us, and we come up with ratings, and it's a fake.
So as a wine business expert, you don't really believe in these ratings?
As a wine business expert, we never promoted or published or made public or associated one of our wines with the points. Though, of course, we have plenty. We have plenty of 3 glasses by the Gambero Rosso, 90-something by what. You don't do that. But that is really a choice you have to make when you distribute wine. You can be super effective selling wines associated with a pricing system. It's a way that I never liked, I never will, never used.
That's cool. Like, I mean, there's a similar topic that I'm considering when we talk about slow food or 0 kilometers. I think that in Europe, and especially in Italy, we have a long tradition that it wasn't called organic or 0 kilometer once. It was just like the nonna having, the patch garden and then making like traditional food. I love in Australia that we got like veggie gardens and community in like all the small suburbs, and I really love that about Australia. But I would like to understand from you, what do you think about the concept? Like, do you think that this 0 kilometer is similar to our concept of traditional like homemade food? How do you see that?
I think they go quite together well. And actually, in terms of farmers markets or local coffee roaster, for example, because the pattern and the path of development of coffee in Australia is the example for the rest of the world.
Great. I love coffee in Melbourne.
So that thing, which is very much Australian, goes extremely together well. The promotion and conservation of our traditions. It's not by pure chance that slow food started in Italy. Slow food started in Italy because, again, as you said, it's some sort of natural heritage component. So it became structured, and it became the idea of promoting all over the world something that to us was a bit natural, a bit in our DNA.
We call it tradizione or traditional. It was always like, we've always been doing something like similar, right? So you know that the best veggies come from the farmer, the nonno's farmer or the aunties, and then sometimes those products are sold in like small markets, right? But this doesn't work with the main distribution. So for you, it's gonna be a similar challenge, right? So you want to bring like really good quality, I assume, and also like a reasonable pricing, right? So there should be a balance between the best products and the distribution, right?
One of the things that I'm thinking of is the classic distinction between native, indigenous, and international varieties. Okay, so you can sell international varieties a lot because people know it. Getting back to people ordering the same stuff, they know Chardonnay, they know Shiraz, they know Merlot, they know Cab, and on and on and on. But we grow up with the concept of the indigenous variety. So again, even in our sector, coming from Italy immediately puts the focus on what is local and typical and historic. So
what's local here? the meat pie? No, just joking.
Local. There's a lot of local in Australia because
I like the Australian. Aussie brekkie, I love it. Right?
No,
Just joking.
I mean, of course, yes. There is very Aussie stuff that most people in Italy don't have a clue about, of course, and potentially they would never touch or ingest.
Like Vegemite?
Of course.
Vegemite
is the first example, but okay, and I don't think we can, I mean, with all respect, of course, we cannot match a sausage roll with a panino with prosciutto di Parma or San Daniele. But having said that, which is, of course, the good, again, basis for discussion, and we all grow together, we all win together, we don't lose together. But slow food local, again, is totally embedded. So it's very good that this happened. They're still doing a fantastic job. It's a framework, and it's a basis for discussion about actually the difficulty of keeping local and tradition and true alive, because of course this is the menace, the difficulty, the fight.
Piero, at Dining Room Stories, we want to know the crazy stuff. You know, having had a restaurant in Bologna for a long time, can you tell us, you know, what was the craziest thing that happened in your restaurant?
I don't know. I mean, the restaurant, as you know, it's all about that. It's all about this crazy level of pace, intensity, and relationship with people. And when you have 200 human contacts a day, you meet a lot of weird people.
But if you have to pick one of the craziest stories that happened there.
I don't know. I have to tell you that I operated my first wine bar in the historical center of Bologna. And closing time, I didn't need a special license to close 6 days, 6 nights a week at 2 a.m. So when you close 2 a.m. and you are not a nightclub or whatever, you are a place where we would serve degustation menu, either seafood or meat with wine pairings till midnight.
Wow.
Okay, this is a world that actually is gone even in Italy. It's not that
Doesn't
Italy is
exist
late,
anymore.
Australia is no, it's gone completely. But so I lived that phase from the mid-90s till the mid-2000s, where it was very high intensity, and so you had, especially the night people, of course, it's very stimulating characters and weird people.
Or overstimulated.
Well, sometimes, yes. You also are on a diet which is not exactly the best one, like eating kilos of mortadella with bottles of champagnes every night for years and years between 2:45 a.m. and 4:45 a.m. and that's why you become the wreck I am today.
Cholesterol through the roof.
Yeah, correct.
Actually,
correct. So the crazy thing, I think, was the diet. The diet was really crazy.
Mortadella in champagne.
Mortadella and champagne is
Like,
a match
actually,
made in heaven.
I think
Yeah.
it's poetic.
I love
Mortadella and champagne
Mortadella.
is romantic. It's some
Mortadella and champagne is absolutely number one. We needed to, and then again, you work in Europe and you shop around, so you import your own champagne, because buying champagne in France is like buying Brunello in Tuscany. So you have a total open market. So in the end, you import your own champagne. I don't know, you buy thousands of bottles a year. Half of them you drink.
How is it possible now that champagne is cheaper in Australia than it actually is in Europe? Or Brunello that you mentioned before, that is not far from my town.
I think French champagne is still cheaper in Europe. Sometimes it can happen that you can find important wines, important bottles at a very good price around the world in export markets.
But I've seen even, for let's call it luxury products, over $100. Let's call it luxury, especially in the wine business. Where I'm from, which is not far from Tuscany, Brunelli are more expensive there than here in Australia. Like, I don't understand. Like, can you explain me the logic? Or?
I think the logic behind that is that if you have very few bottles, sometimes on a location of a very important, recognizable wine in Italy, you don't want to sell it. So you preserve it by pricing it very, very high. You want it, you'll have it, you pay an outrageous amount of money for it. It's very different when you are in an import market, whether you are here or in the US or the UK or Scandinavia. Scandinavia works a bit differently, sorry. Let's say US and Australia. You still have minimal amounts of a specific product, but you have potentially 50 importers bringing 3 Brunello each. In the end, potentially, it can become sometimes more accessible, that very special bottle, if you are in an export market than in your own home country. So that's potentially the thing.
Makes sense.
If you want to buy important Italian in Italy, you're going to pay a lot, maybe more than in an export market. Yeah.
So, controversy,
Yes.
I would say. Italian wine or French wine? What do you prefer? What's the best wine?
The basic thing between Italy and France, again, is getting back to what we mentioned before about localism and varieties. Italy is far more difficult to read against France because of that. In France, there is this overlapping between variety. Of course, I'm simplifying, but there are areas working with less varieties. So Burgundy is that, Champagne is that, Alsace is that, Provence is that. And especially to a wider audience, France is that. So not a lot of varieties, great image, sometimes great quality, sometimes not.
Seems to be more glamorous to order a French wine than an Italian one.
Yeah. But this is also, I have to tell you, very much true all over the world, but super strong in the Anglo-Saxon. If you took the UK, I mean, in the 70s, ages ago, you want to be correct, acceptable, lovable. You don't show up with a bottle of Italian wine. You come up with a bottle of Chablis, and that was the. It's still like that. And that potentially explains the amount of very bad supermarket industrial champagne which is still sold in Australia. So it's good to come with a bottle with an orange label, not to mention the name of the producer, but we all know that is perfect. If you just present yourself with the best Franciacorta or whatever, even a cracker, whatever,
I like Cartiz.
it's not champagne.
Yeah.
Champagne is champagne.
I know.
So okay, we cannot fight with that. We will never reach that thing in terms of image and perception. But we are far stronger when it comes to the amount of varieties, the local character, the food matching.
And I would say the San Millesimati, for example, the Italian one that I tried like lately, especially from Friuli and the Veneto area, are level. I definitely like the taste is like, I don't know, because champagne has that kind of like back taste that is a little bit, I would say,
Champagne is
bitter.
Yeah, but
right?
champagne is a very big chapter, and the impact of the big maison and the very standardized and very industrialized wine is such that people have that they don't even know champagne. Actually, the real thing is not that one. But at the same time, there's millions of bottles flooding the world, and they've been doing it for ages. So the perception is that it becomes really a very conceptual thing, which is so detached from what's inside the bottle, from the product itself. Yeah. That's why you can come up.
Perception is reality, though.
Yeah. So if the market perception becomes reality.
These things.
But again, yes, it's not a snobbish thing. But if you are into wine, you don't touch it, and when you favor, I don't know, a super good artisan cava from Spain, or something made with an indigenous variety in Italy, or even in Germany, which, by the way, nearly invented the product itself. And it's not for a reason that all the top maison of French champagne, they bear German names. So
yeah, and that's beautiful, because that's the whole point. Like when it comes to education, right? Even I love wine, I'm Italian, so it's like same thing when we talk about art, right? We're born in a country that is so beautiful that then you live there, you get used to beauty, but then you go to other places like Australia, you appreciate some of the buildings, but we're educated to beauty, and so we're also educated to taste. How would you educate, like, I don't know, Australian, for example, like other cultures, slowly to understand the difference from a brand to a good wine?
This is getting back to the level of professionalism, enthusiasm, application, hands-on approach of the Australian professionals. So, of course, education in food and beverage means that you are addressing mostly the 25 to 35 years old bracket, and behind the bar and the counter, you have a 25 to 35 years old priest of food and beverage. And this is the way you create education. You need very good professional people and knowledgeable people and passionate people talking to enthusiasts who want your time, they want your knowledge, they want information. So this is excellent in Australia, because we all go through wine bars and places, and even especially artisan wine bottle shop, because bottle shops are, of course, heavily owned and dominated by supermarkets. But if you just get out of that and you go to an independent one, you would find a very passionate and professional people, and that is the place for education.
What's the most important skill of a wine importer right now?
I think the most important skill of a wine importer is exactly the same thing, is studying. You never have to stop exploring, studying. I think this qualifies for most businesses, but the thing is that you always need to intercept trends, go hands-on, visit producers, go to wine events, taste continuously. It is a very hands-on approach, but it is a constant exploration. If you stick to brands and it's just, I create stock and then I have people that need to push it out, yes, it can be very effective, but your business is not evolving and you end up with a business which is weaker in terms of competition. The moment you continue studying, explore, which doesn't mean that you can embrace everything and put it in your portfolio, structure, whatever, because of course it's a limited environment, but you do not stop studying and learning, and this is, I think, the most important thing.
And what trends do you see in the future
Trends,
in the restaurant industry?
I have to tell you the trends. I don't want to be. It's not being pessimistic. The trends are very challenging and, in some respect, quite worrying, because what I see now already, it already started pre-COVID, and then of course it is very much self-evident now after COVID. There is a completely different new approach to our sector, food and beverage, hospitality, and wine. And the point is very much of a perception cultural one. I already see people struggling now, and I don't think it will get simpler. Actually, it will get more complex in the coming years. They struggle with the meaning of the product. Whether the product is a bottle of wine itself or going out for dinner, what does it mean? What do I do with this? Because they have been a bit, not deprived, but a distance happened between the consumer, in large concept of a consumer in our food, beverage, hospitality sector, and the meaning of the action that the consumer is actually embodying and the performance.
So what you're saying is it's all about promotion of a product without a meaning attached to the product.
There is a lot of that, which is push, push, push. And so visibility is one thing and becomes so relevant, as we were discussing social before. The challenge will be to associate the visibility with not even the experience, what's behind, the meaning, the context. So it's always been a matter of intangibles. Intangibles, they win against tangibles because it's fascination, it's emotion, as we discussed many times. So they are super forces, superpowers. Now the customer base is a bit lost. They really, what is this? What does this mean? What are you telling me? I don't know.
So how can we help them? Can we say taste continuously, drink responsibly? Can you say that? Keep tasting, but like drink responsible, right?
Yeah, responsibly, of course, all the time, every time, because it's not a matter of drinking. It's a matter of experiencing and developing your own taste path. But it's very much more than ever important that very professional operators, young people, very interesting in the subject of food and beverage, speak. Then the medium we will find, but you need to speak, provide with infos, insights, and getting back to this is the meaning of this, the meaning of hospitality, the meaning of the product, the meaning.
It's really beautiful.
Piero, we are wrapping up the interview. I have one last question. You have had an amazing career and experience. So what advice would you give to a younger self if you would have to start today, to a younger Piero?
I don't think the pattern has changed a lot. I started when I was around less than 30. What I see is that the level of pressure has grown dramatically. So it's not that I grow old and I see young people who are not as confident. But I think there is a bit of this lack of confidence and direction, which is the same that young people experience towards a product or going out for dinner or whatever. At the same time, I don't think that people are less smart, courageous, or bright. So you just need to embrace experience, dive into it, make a lot of mistakes, which is quite obvious, set some goals potentially, because you cannot look for 20 years of mistakes. 10 potentially are enough, but try to learn, study, experience, share a lot of information, and that's it. So you cannot start a successful operation. We know, we all did business in our lives. Very good business does not come from imitation of good business. Very good business
Amazing.
comes from mistakes and potentially having other concepts like durability or other stuff. So experience, travel, make a lot of mistakes, and okay, of course, the support, because then you need to be very practical. So
And drink good wine, right?
wine, always, of course, fantastic, but there's plenty, and there will be plenty forever, because it's not going to die anytime soon.
Piero, for us was a pleasure to have you at Dining Room Stories. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Grazie mille,
mille.
Piero. It's been a
Grazie
pleasure.
mille.
Thank
È
you
stato
so much.
fantastico, un grande piacere.
Arrivederci.
Arrivederci.
Grazie.
Ciao, ciao.
Welcome to Dining Room Stories with Omar and Andrea, where we take you behind the scenes of the restaurant business world with stories and conversation that inspire.